Hi, this is Aaron Stanley for the second video in the series on my YouTube channel. I'm going to talk about my composition process in this video. I'm always interested in composers' compositional process. It's endlessly fascinating to me because different composers have different ways that they approach writing their music. Some are very orally minded. They process information very orally, and they may start with a MIDI sequence because they hear it. They have to hear it before they write it out. Others are maybe more visually oriented. Others will sit down at the piano and work things out at the piano. Others will just write straight in the notation. So it's just different. It depends on your particular strengths and weaknesses and how you process information and how you get your ideas. So for me as a composer, when I work on a piece of music, it almost always starts with some sort of concept or an idea about what the piece is about. Because without an idea, without some kind of concept, it's very difficult to come up with musical material. The first stage of composition, when you're faced with that blank page, it can be very intimidating because you have a world of infinite possibilities that are available to you. And so you've got to narrow that down in some way. So for me, a couple of ways of narrowing that down. Number one, I want to know exactly who I'm writing for. Not necessarily the individuals, although that really helps, particularly in knowing what kind of level they're at and how difficult the music can be. But more importantly, the instrumentation, because the instruments themselves will suggest certain materials or musical ideas. So I have to be clear before I write on what kind of ensemble I'm writing for, whether it's a wind ensemble or an orchestra or a brass band or a brass quintet or woodwind quintet, whatever the case may be. And then from there, of course, is the idea or concept about what the piece is about. And for example, I'm working on a woodwind quintet piece right now. It's for woodwind quintet plus percussion. And the piece is called Chakras. And the concept for this piece is this Eastern philosophy that's wrapped up in this concept of the 7 energy centers that are located along the spine. And each energy center is associated with a different level of consciousness. And so the concept of this piece is to be a musical journey through these chakras into enlightenment. And even a simple idea like that is enough to generate the imagination, to get the sparks of creativity flowing, to get those initial ideas on the page. For me as a composer, I write straight into Sibelius music notation program. In ages past, composers would write things down by hand. These days we have computer software for doing that, and I use Sibelius. And in the past, before I used Sibelius, I would write it out by hand and then go to Finale. That was the last step of composing, was taking what I'd written and going to Finale and then engraving it. But when Sibelius came out, it was such a leap over Finale. It was so much easier, so much faster to use. I got used to just writing straight into Sibelius. And for me, that's the most comfortable way to compose, because when I get an idea, I want to write it down immediately, even if it's just a fragment, or if it's a chord progression, or if it's a bass line, or if it's just a melody, whatever it is, whatever that musical idea is, I want to get that down in notated form as quickly as possible. Other composers work differently. I was just talking to a composer earlier today that likes to sequence her music before she writes it out. Stephen Bryant is another composer that does that kind of thing. But for me, I'm a visual person. I've got to see it. For me, that's what locks it into place, is seeing it in notated form. And then from there, it's just a matter of playing with the melodic material and seeing what it wants to do. The structure is something that I think about early on as part of the concept, but I don't I'm not very rigid about the structure. I'm not a structure or form-based composer. A lot of times my music will develop very organically. And used to I wouldn't even think about form, but I'm thinking about form a lot more these days. But I'm still allowing the music to suggest where it wants to go without forcing it into a predefined form. But forms are very important because it helps give music unity and it helps give it enough diversity. It helps you to provide that right kind of balance and keep a piece well balanced. So that's just a little bit about my compositional process. If I were writing a choral piece, it's a bit different because, for example, I'm also working on a credo, the Nicene Creed in Latin for SATB choir, plus brass quintet, percussion, and organ. And for that piece, it's really about the text. It's the text suggesting melodic material. And so that's really what I dig into. I dig into the text, I dig into the meaning, I dig into where those stresses really are on those syllables so that I can write music for those words that make sense and really bring out the meaning in those words. The interesting thing about the creative process is that initial spark, that initial idea. It's a leap. It's really a quantum leap from having nothing or knowing nothing to suddenly you've got an idea. It's one of those things that even scientists like to explore and describe, and it's a mystery how that happens, how that initial idea or that initial spark happens. That initial spark is so critical to getting the piece started, for getting off the ground with working on a piece. And of course, from there, it's a matter of working with the material. From there on, it's just work. It's just work. And there's also these creative leaps that happen periodically as you're working on a piece. But a lot of it is work, and a lot of the art of composition is in what you do with that initial spark, with that initial idea, how you develop that, how you put that together into a unified composition. That's really where the art of composition is at. It's not so much in getting ideas. Many people get ideas. Many people have great ideas for textures or grooves or melodies or whatever the case may be. But it's how you take that melody, it's how you take that groove or that texture and incorporate that into a musical work of art that really is what composition is all about. So thank you for watching. I'm J. Aaron Stanley. I'm a composer, and you can find me online at souljourneymusic.com. Thanks for watching.